Hi out there, comic book fans. This is Joe. Welcome to Anachronic Comics. My special guest tonight is Gary B., the casual comic guy. How you doing tonight, Gary?
I'm doing well, Joe. And yourself, bud?
Yeah, I'm a little tired, so it's not an espresso
Same.
milk ball, but I'm having some espresso.
I just had 2 coffees, and I'm just.
There you go. So we're both running on empty, I guess.
Yeah.
But tonight,
There's always too much to do in life, right?
I'm telling you, and I was talking to my son. He called me yesterday, and I said, I can't talk to you now. I'm in a meeting. Because I'm involved with something. He says, what? Because you're retired. I go, I know. I said, but I'm just as busy, I think. Anyway.
Busier now than before.
It's good to have you, Gary. Let's take a look and see who's joined us so far here in the chat before we get started. And of course, taking back the #1 position, it seems, is Las Cruces. Nice to have you. Thank you for being here. We have Steve the Voice White. All right. Thank you. We have Wellbore. Good to see you here tonight. Thank you very much for showing up and supporting Gary. Let's see who else we might have. Uh-oh, this is going to be bad. Yeah, Jackson, Roy Kirk. All right. What is he saying? I need Joe to make Gary sweat. Gary, you know how many people have told me that I need to make you sweat?
It's not the hard part's already done. Nothing's going to make me sweat now.
That's right. It's done. And here he is, the one and the only, our good friend, Jerry the Jitterbug comic book collector. Jerry, I haven't caught your latest yet on that X-Men #1. I've got to do that.
I'm halfway through it. I had to watch it in 2 parts.
And we have here Signature King. How you doing? Good to have you here. And here's Naman. Yeah, is Naman here? Let's see. Come on, let's work. Yeah, comic bookworm Naman. Who Gary, you were on his show talking about the book, right? Was it last
Saturday evening?
Oh, Saturday evening, right? Okay, great. Right. Okay, so again, we'll catch other people as they show up and comment, and we'll say hello to them as well. So we're here basically to talk to Gary about his new novella, his book, Need, right here. All right. And this is going to be a professional type of interview. Gary, some people were saying, well, Joe, you cross-examined people, right? As a lawyer. I said, yeah, all the time. And they said, well, did you really do tough examination? I said, yeah. I said, one time there's this one guy, and I gave him a really tough cross-examination. It was really good for our side. And a week later, he died of a heart attack. I said, I'm not going to do that to Gary.
Well, also, they have to remember when you're cross-examining somebody, they've usually done something wrong, so they're already sweating it out.
Well, yeah, he was trying to get money from us, so that was wrong enough because he shouldn't have gotten the money from us like that. But anyway, so this is a book. I've read it a couple of times, and we're going to talk a little bit about the book, and I'm going to give away any big secrets unless Gary wants to. But Gary, starting off, just looking, we have kind of some very interesting cover art here. All right. And it says here, cover art is by Danny Fisher. So who's Danny Fisher?
So Danny Fisher, I got to meet through my buddy who wrote the foreword, Mikhail Galloway. That's him right there.
There he is.
Hey, Mikhail. So Mikhail wrote the foreword, and
the foreword, yeah.
But I met Danny through him because Mikhail has this great nerd basement set up, and it's like a dream basement.
Really?
Nerd stuff all over the place. He was showing me art from Danny. And then I met Danny through him. When I asked Mikhail to read it, he suggested to let Danny read it as well. And I sent Danny a copy through the email. So I got feedback from both of them, along with feedback from CJ and Pocan Joe, a few other members of the community, to tell me where I needed to tweak, what I needed to fix, stuff like that. So when I put it out, I had the best product. And he put me in contact with Danny. At the time, we were discussing possibly doing a comic book, but then I just decided, and I had talked to other people about it, but I didn't really like what their ideas were for it. Mm-hmm. When I talked to Danny, yes, drawing. Thank you.
There it is. All right.
And he's also drawing conversation on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Danny and I were talking, and Danny's like, "Oh, I'll do a cover for you." I said, "Oh, great."
Nice.
I go, "Let me know how much," and he refused any money. He just wanted to do the cover.
My kind of guy.
And so it was really very kind of him. And he asked me what I wanted. I'm like, "Look, I want lots of red on the cover because it catches the eye." And so and he asked me a few things, and I told him what I was looking for. that she needs to look like a threat, needs to look like a villain, and part of her transformation. And he caught all that for me, which is really kind of him.
That's very
And
cool.
for those of you who haven't checked out his YouTube channel, he does really great stuff. He'll sit there and he starts with a clean slate, and he'll do a whole cover, and he'll give you the history of the character he's drawn while he's doing it.
Yeah, and I've seen that. It's very good, I have to say.
Yeah, he does it very well.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm going to put this down for a while here, but Gary, we'll talk about how people can get the book and so forth at the end first, because after the interview, they may not want to buy it. So anyway, and I have some questions. I'm going to be referring to my questions on my pad and so forth. But one of the things that I think is important, and I've been trying to write something. Doug Bratton, right? He's written comic books, and that came from a novel he had written. He encouraged me to I had this one particular idea that was based on some life experience that I had with my father. He encouraged me to write about it, and I've done a little bit about that, and so forth. But I find it really, really difficult to find the time. So I know you're raising your son. You're working very difficult, very long hours. You have a terrific YouTube site with these videos coming out that I'm saying I'm kind of jealous of the number of videos coming out. Where do you find the time to write like this?
I need to find more time to write. Yeah, usually, if I sit down to write, my goal is always to do at least a page.
Okay.
So if I sit down, I'm not going to get up till I write a page.
Oh, okay.
So, and usually I have a starting point for that page, and it kind of takes on its life as I go.
So do you have like an outline basically of what the story is going to be, and so you kind of know what the next page is going to have? And
I have an outline of who the character is and what they're going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And but as to like how they develop within the story, the character will dictate that to me as I write them, because they take on a life of their own for me.
So do you write at the same time every day?
No, it's just hey, I got an hour, maybe I can sit down and write. I need to do that because I'll be more productive if I do. But right now, most of the time when I have free time, I'm trying to find little pieces of time to get some sleep, so I'm not exhausting all the time.
Right. So when you write stuff, and you've explained a little bit about how you kind of work it out, what do you find to be the most difficult part of the writing process?
Just the most difficult part is constantly rewriting it.
Yeah.
Because when you write something, and I mentioned this the other night, so I'll write like the first 7 or 8 pages by hand because it gives me a feel for the story and the character.
Okay.
And then I transfer over to the laptop into the Word, and I do that. But as I'm transferring it, I'm making changes to those 7 and 8 pages as well. Right. And as a writer for myself, when and I use that loosely, I'm not putting myself in any elevated category, trust me. But when I'm writing, I constantly want to change things and tweak things, and the biggest problem is not doing that all the time. You have to at some point leave it alone.
And the creative people, that is the issue. I have a friend of mine who is a really terrific painter. All right. I mean, not a professional. As a matter of fact, he refuses to sell his stuff. So occasionally, if we're together, we might go into a gallery or something like that. And he, being a painter, will always seek out the painter of the stuff in the gallery, and he always asks, "When do you know that it's finished?" And I know a painter that lives actually in my area right here, so I asked him the same question, and he says, "It's finished when I've got to get it somewhere." So, so I think a lot of it has to be kind of a self-discipline you know, as you've kind of, I think, alluded to, where you're writing something, you're getting something together. And I'm not talking about editing and so forth, you know, we can get into that a little bit, but you have to basically say, okay, I think I'm kind of at the point where I've got to get to the next step. Is that fair?
Oh yeah. And, you know, and when I'm writing and when I'm approaching an end, the end's not always difficult. It's changing everything in the middle constantly that gets me.
Yeah.
Like when I end something, I like to leave it just a touch vague. I want people to be able to continue something on in their mind, how they imagine it.
Good.
And
that was one of my questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I don't like there to be anything finite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's, you know, there can be an ending, but I want there to be something left over that whoever's reading it, their brain can chew on it.
And we'll talk about that with respect to this as well. You know, when we get to talking specifically.
John, it is on Amazon Canada. I can look at it on my phone.
Okay, yeah, and we will put. I mean, since we're addressing it now, I didn't get a chance to put the link in the description, but I will, at least to Amazon US. But Gary, you told me this.
So the secret for finding it right now, because I'm a new author, is you type in "need Gary Baker" in the search, and then you click on books, and then it comes up.
There you go.
That narrows the search down quite a bit, and it comes up even quicker if you narrow it to Kindle.
Okay. Well, he says he can't find it, but you know, I remember it was difficult for me to find it here because I didn't do what Gary just said. So maybe give that a shot.
Well, I'll send John the Canadian link.
Okay, good.
Because
all right. So
what's that?
No, I was going to say that my understanding from little birds around here is that prior to writing Need, you actually did write some stuff that was published, right? And it was under a pseudonym, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think. Did I have the book near me? I thought I did.
That's all right.
So,
That's all right.
All right. So when I wanted to start writing, I wanted to write in what I thought might be an easy genre to get into, to see if the style I wrote would be accepted by people.
Okay.
And I wanted a style that's not known for character development, and see if I could create characters in it that people would give a crap about.
Okay.
And in a field that people are just mostly looking for one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I dipped my toe in erotica, and I wrote 5 little books. And then I got contacted by a website who contracted me to write a one-off story for their website, and I did that. And they published that on their website, which was nice. I'm the only one that has a copy of that now. I think it was called A Night In. But so I wrote that, but my main thing is I wanted characters that people liked. I didn't just want to. And that's when you read the reviews that people write, the one thing they always mention is, all this stuff's in there, but I really like the characters.
Yeah, and that's right.
That was what I was trying to develop. I was using these stories to find my voice, and I was using them to get better before I wrote something I really cared about, like horror.
Okay, but these were written a while back, right? Weren't they?
2011 and 12.
Okay, so it took you a long time to find your voice.
No, there was a lot of life stuff, Joe.
Yeah, right. I mean, that always gets
that
always gets in the way. Yeah. So those stories, those 5 stories, were erotica as well. And what was the pseudonym that you used?
Chase Boner.
Chase
Boehner. It was supposed to be tongue in cheek and funny.
Yes, I got it.
And, people really like the name a lot. I got tons of compliments on it.
Well, that's got to be a book, you know. Chase Boner's got to be in a book now, I think, you know, because that would be really, really cool. So let me ask you a question, because this always interested me, because being someone who I thought was always somewhat creative, but stifled simply because of the fact of the job that I had. I always looked at like Amazon and publishing and so forth. So I'm making an assumption here, but you correct me if I'm wrong. But the books, that's the one that collects them all together, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And And that woman is your girlfriend, right? On the cover?
No, she was a friend that sent me her boudoir pic so I could pick one to put on the cover.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. So one of the things is now these, am I correct to say that these were all self-published by you or not?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Except for the one on the website where they asked me to write one for them.
Right. So that goes, I mean, I know Amazon has a process for that or something along those lines. Did you take that process or did you go through some other kind of process?
Oh no, I went through the KDP Select because I can't afford the traditional way of just paying like $250 like a base submission price just to get your script looked at and then probably ultimately refused. Who knows? Because they're looking at 10,000 other scripts, or who knows when they're going to get to it. I just wanted to put it out there, and the reason I chose. We're
getting the statements. Go ahead.
Right. Well, Jackson Roykirk's here, so he's going to do that. But the reason I chose Amazon too is it gives me an instant global audience.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So like some of the I already have like a UK review on there, and I'll end up with reviews from all over the world.
And reviews really help the book sell more, right?
Yeah, so it's important. Reviews are they not only help the book sell more, they also, like, people are saying I have trouble finding it. You know, like if you look for my other name, it pops right up because I sold a lot of copies. But this
Chase Boner, right?
Yes, but under my name, Gary Baker, this one's having trouble. Like, it doesn't just populate regular. You have to go under books to find it and search under books. But the reviews and sales, all that helps push the algorithm where I turn up in searches more.
Yeah, so it's kind of like YouTube, with the thumbs up and all that. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I'm sure YouTube took some of their stuff from Amazon's lessons.
Right. So I have to make sure that I go on there and leave a review. And it'd be nice if everybody else that picks up the book and gets it, and puts the review down there as well. So you already mentioned why you picked erotica as the basis for that, because you're trying to use, find your voice and, find something where you can develop a character and so forth. So that's
right. And I wanted to see if, writing that other stuff, it was kind of easy for me. And I kept coming up with things that, you get weird questions from people and like, oh, have you done? I'm like, no, I haven't done that. That's fiction. You have this. No, I don't have that. That's
you answer that question later on, Gary. So
yes. But that was the trick was in that is to create characters in this field that's mostly known for one thing that people are actually attached to. And I was able to do that.
That's good.
Because there's people like, oh, this is my favorite character in the stories you wrote. This is my favorite character. And there's reasons.
Well, I had found out about the pseudonym, so I did search it. And I have to say that the reviews, at least I looked at a few of them. I don't know if I looked at all 5, but the reviews were almost uniformly quite positive. I mean, some people said you're their favorite erotic whatever writer,
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was like my fiction, which is really funny because I write mostly women, and it's women that identify with what I'm writing. So at least I think I write women well.
That's good. Yeah. All right. So why don't we get into a little bit about the book? And again, these are going to be a little bit of like some more generalized questions, but we can get some specifics.
Sure. Just real quick though, I'd like to mention Mikhail, who wrote my foreword, which is he made me sound way better than I am. He was so kind and so generous in that foreward.
I didn't know who he was talking about here.
Right.
It was really good. It was well done.
He did a great job. And when he sent it to me, he goes, I hope it's okay. I'm like, it's okay. You make me sound like I'm this messiah. I'm like, this is incredible.
Well, I will read the last 2 paragraphs because it kind of leads you into the idea of the story. Enjoy the thrilling ride that Gary Baker has crafted for us within Need. It is my pleasure to present this novella to you, and I eagerly anticipate the profound impact it will have on your mind and rhythmic blood flow to all your major organs. With mouth-watering art provided by the superbly talented Danny Fisher, you will undoubtedly feel the need, quote unquote, to serve your queen. So kind of interesting.
he's also publishes. He's also had his own comic out too.
Oh
So
yeah,
he owns an IP, and he's published before himself.
that's good. Mhm. Yeah. So, all right. So let's see. Terrence Deadman. What does he say? Just ordered the book from Amazon. He's in England for less than a tenner, including postage.
Oh,
Nice.
nice. Thank you
Good.
very much. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at this then. So let me ask you a couple of questions about it. So generally, and again, because I've been trying to write a little bit, I've been studying a little bit about it. So some of this is from the stuff that I've just gleaned over the last like 4 or 5 months trying to
Right.
do something that I'm probably never going to accomplish, but you did. So I'm very proud of you. And I'm kind of living through you now with the fact that you actually published something like this. So generally, literature is based in like 4 major genres, right? We have fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and drama. So to me, Need is fiction. It's set forth in a dystopian world, really, right? A setting of like dark and really almost kind of cataclysmic type of a future or alternate
Well,
present.
it turns into that in that particular area.
That's right.
It's a regular today time story, but with something an alien element that's introduced.
Right, at least in that particular geographic area so
Right.
far, right? Right. So and the sub group, I guess, is really horror and erotic
Correct.
overtones, or maybe it's
Yeah,
erotic and
it's
with horror overtones. I'm not
erotic
sure.
horror fiction.
Okay, erotic horror fiction. Okay, that sounds good. All right. So bless you. So
Thank
let
you.
me say first of all that I did enjoy the story. Okay, I thought it was good. I did care about the characters, and I'll give you a little bit of a critique towards the end. All right,
Sure.
because you have to remember one thing, Gary. I may have been an attorney, but I was also a leader of a lot of attorneys, and I read, critiqued, and edited a ton of things.
Right.
And so I sit down there, and I could take a look at this and say, this, and this, and this. Sometimes too picayune, but I do edit. I do take a look at things, and I have a certain way of looking at stuff that annoys my wife. but that's who I am. So I'm not going to get into all of that type of stuff, but I am going to give you a little bit of stuff that at least I saw. So
Sure.
let's start off again, and again, I'm going to ask you questions so you can take out whatever you want and say whatever you want about it. So what's the premise of the story?
The premise of the story is you have this woman that has lived through a life of abuse. She's in a job that she's been at for years, and it's just a dead end daily 9 to 5er. There's a horrific accident. There's something alien introduced, and what happens is, in order to survive, her and this alien bond together, and they create a new life form.
Okay, so the premise is a woman who is basically living out her life, nothing good happening to her, and then this alien infusion changes her life completely, where instead of being subservient and have to answer to other people and whatever else,
being a victim,
it gets flipped, and she's suddenly so she changes her life 180 degrees, during this.
And she accepts it all without question, because
she accepts it. Right.
She's just tired of what's been happening to her.
Okay, so what inspired this story for you?
It's I can't say I was distinctly inspired, because ideas pop in my head. That's why I made that post on Instagram today with me and my paper. I was sitting in the car. I'd watched the Super Bowl, had no sleep going into my overnight shift, and and I always get to work early. So I'm sitting in the parking lot. I'm sipping a coffee, and then all of a sudden my brain just starts popping with ideas and lines. I'll get like just random lines. I'm like, had to pull the pad out, write the line. I'm like, because you'll forget the line.
Oh yeah.
Like you'll have like a line that you really like, and you're going to want to fit it into a story. So I have notebooks of like lines, like stuff that's waiting for the right spot. But
oh wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for this story, it's just what I grew up on, right? I mean, when being an '80s kid, that was all the '80s horror movies. Everything in the '80s had an erotic tinge to it for the most part. And in the not even in the early '90s, when you're looking at movies like Species, even Aliens and Alien. So all that stuff, all that sci-fi, you're looking at Logan's Run, you're looking just Creature, and I loved all the Creature movies growing up too. I always wanted to write my own Creature story, and this is a Creature story as well.
Yeah.
But and I never thought I'd want to write a villain. So that's the part that surprised me about the story, because I always growing up, whenever I read anything,
is she not the alien? But is
no,
she really a villain?
well, it's what she becomes. It's a journey.
You see,
At the beginning, she's not.
Yeah, but I could see it. I could see it a little differently too, which we can talk about.
You can, but that's why it's left open that way. Because what's the main thing about good villains, right? You empathize with them. You can understand why they're doing what they're doing. My whole goal with her was for people to like her despite these horrific things that she's doing, and to root for her, even though they probably shouldn't be rooting for her. She is hurting a lot of innocent people that haven't done anything to her.
Yeah,
but
maybe except for
rooting for her.
Maybe except for Martin, but we'll talk about him in a little while, you know.
Right. And I also did something else purposely in the story, because and I take like lessons from John Carpenter and people that I grew up watching. Like, I never tell you what the original alien form looks like. I think it's better if you imagine your own form. Makes it more personal to the reader.
Right.
And with her, I never gave her any ethnicity or skin tone. So everyone imagines her a different way, which endears them to the character even more, because they imagine her the way they would picture her.
I see her clearly.
Yeah, and everyone sees her clearly a little bit differently, which is the way I wanted. I only gave her two distinct features that people could latch onto, and that was dark hair and blue eyes, and that was it. Everything else is up to the imagination.
So you mentioned that you wrote the first 7 pages by hand before you moved over to the laptop, but there had to have been a process with this. So you must have finished the first draft, right? And then gone back to. So this final novella, I'll call it a book. This final book, you know, how did it differ materially from that first draft? What was so different in this that didn't appear in your first draft, if anything?
Well, they're pretty close. There's just tightening up. Just it's minutia, little details that make a difference, that create a smoother read. It's basically the same story, the same premise. Everything in was just like, in a literal sense, like smoothing over sentences and grammar and stuff like that. You know, where you needed punctuation, where you didn't. For me, that's the hard part.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get into some of that a little bit later, I think. But when I took a look at this type of thing, you know, and maybe it's just the way that I think, I started looking at essentially what was happening in this town. All right. Right. With Alexis, you know, and the alien that took her over, or that she agreed to work with.
And that's another thing. I wanted a small town, because growing up, everything happened in a small town in the horror movies.
That's right. So nobody else.
I think that was about the only cliche I use. Like, the accident is different, because I get so, like, if I go to watch a movie or a TV show and it starts with a car accident, I'm like, oh my gosh, really? I mean, how many car accidents can happen as an introduction? So it's or they get a call and someone's dead. I can't do that stuff.
Okay. I'm going to ask you like this question, but it's really a 2-part question. Okay.
Sure.
When I first looked at this thing, you know, and read through it, you kind of read it for what it's worth. Right. And like you said, you get invest yourself in the characters, you look and seeing what's happened. You take a look at Alexis in her new state as a villain. You might feel sympathetic because of the situation that she's involved with and where she came from and all that. Maybe not. Maybe you see her in a different light. But what I always like to do, and maybe it's because of the nature of you know, the job I had and the stuff that I like still. You know, I'm very much into history, you know, and to some extent politics, you know, what's happening in the world today. And when I look at these type of things, I always say, what basically can I find in society that reflects? Now, obviously, not going to reflect it, one on one. But what do I
Right.
see in society with this type of thing? Now, did you, when you wrote this thing, and I know you get an idea and you write it down, did you have anything in mind with respect to what's happening generally in society? That kind of gave you this impetus. I know you spoke about this woman and kind of being on the down and out and all that type of stuff. And there's a lot of people that are like that, and then suddenly getting power. So I kind of looked at it as almost, here's someone who's been beat up, and there's a lot of people like that. And through, I don't know if you want to say good fortune, but, through good fortune, suddenly her situation is reversed. And how did she handle it?
Well, and the thing I wanted to approach is, obviously it's a fictional place that she's in when the event, but she has two choices. She can reject it or accept it.
Right.
And, depending on what's happened in her life, and the person she is it depends on what she's going to do. And we get her choice.
Well, but you see, and I don't want
to. She keeps going down the darker road after that. She keeps making the darker decisions. After the first one, she doesn't go choose. The only time she went against the darker decision is when she chose Martin.
Yeah, but let me.
That's her a redeeming quality for her in that story.
It shows some humanity still. But the one thing that I want to say is that I almost forgive her for the first decision she makes, because I might have made the same under the circumstances unless I was saintly, because she was about to die.
Right.
And so it was a matter of life or death in some respects for her. And I'm sure she didn't understand what was going to happen next at that point. Right.
And I hope when I was writing that, like, you felt like this character was definitely in peril and didn't have a choice. Like, there's something horrific happening to her. Her skin's blistering. Her arm is pinned under machinery. There's a lot happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And her vision's closing up. Things are getting quite dire for her.
All right. So, when you write something like this, do you envision who the ideal reader would be, or not? Or you just write it?
I do.
Oh, you do. Okay. So, what did you think about this one? Who would be the ideal reader? Or something.
It wasn't any of the people that have loved it.
I hope I wasn't on the list, Gary.
You weren't.
I know, right?
And the thing is, I was writing it for a horror crowd. I was writing it for all of us that grew up watching 80s and 90s horror movies, even late 70s horror movies, just horror movies in general. Like, I've watched horror movies since I was like 7, 8 years old. I've loved them. My parents let me because they didn't bother me. And I had a deep love for horror. Not so much slasher flicks, because I always found those boring. It was something like supernatural or monster, like something where there was a unseen element. Like the slasher ones, it was always a chase, and that was just boring to me. I don't care for chase horror. Like as much as I like John Carpenter, I think as much as I like John Carpenter, Halloween is actually my least favorite movie of his, because it's just an escape the baddie movie.
For me, I mean, I don't seek out erotica, right? And I'm not a big horror guy, because as a kid, it scared the shit out of me. And to this date, even at this advanced age, if someone says, "Oh, there's a great movie on blah, 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 blah on TV," I said, "Yeah, okay, I'm passing." I said, "I'm going to go watch something else or whatever else." So, and the thing is, though, when I have watched some of it, I do enjoy it. But I have this inner thing that pushes me away from it, which is kind of weird.
It's got a stigma, but there's great storytelling in a lot of horror. But with horror being the field it's in, there's also a lot of schlock and just really bad horror stories too. So it's tough. It's one of those genres where it's so full of everything that if you don't hit the right things, you're going to have a bad experience.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, so that's great that you wrote it for like the kids of the 80s, 90s or whatever else that went through the same stuff that you did with respect to that. So let's see what else about the book.
The biggest surprise to me too is you saw the short I had made when it just had the hand opening and revealing the cover. I don't know if you saw that. I did.
Yes.
And I put that out there to force myself to publish it.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I'm like, once I put it out there, I'm like, all right, now I can't turn
Now you
back.
have to do
I
it. So
just
did you
made a
have,
promise
you had,
to
you had
everybody that watched.
reservations? You had
Huh?
reservations about going forward with this thing after you put all the work into it?
You always do,
Wow.
because it doesn't matter who you are. It's when you create something personal,
Mm,
it's tough to share it. You don't know
mm.
what the reaction is going to be, and as tough skin as you can be, ultimately you don't want something that you put your heart and soul in to fail.
Let me just answer, madam. I don't think so, madam. Maybe when I was 10, but not now. But who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe there's some thing that I just scared the shit out of me, you know. And
Yeah,
you're right.
see, I was always the person. It doesn't matter the horror movie. Even as a kid, they didn't scare me. Like I thought The Exorcist was boring. It's not. It's not a movie I like.
Now, did you see it when it first came out?
I saw it as a kid. It didn't bother me at all. I was just like, ugh, I was ready. I was ready for it to end.
Scared the friggin' shit out of me, man. I'm telling you right now. And I saw it out west with my friend. We went there, and I'm like, I'm sitting in the theater. I forget what we used to take trips. Every summer we'd take a trip, just hop in the car and go west somewhere or north or south, whatever we did. It was a great number of years. Of course, it all got spoiled when we got married. But anyway, that's another story. But we were out west somewhere or mid America somewhere, and the movie had come out, and we said, and sometimes at night we're in this small town, right? We're on our way to whatever, or we're stopping somewhere, and he says, "Hey, you want to go see The Exorcist? It just came out." I said, "Yeah, we'll go see it." I didn't think much of it. I'm sitting there watching that movie, saying, "Should I leave? Should I get out of this theater?" And I just kind of sat there and sat through it because I figured if I left, my pal would never let me forget it.
And I was sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, will this end? This is." I'm like, "Why?" Just like this is boring as hell. I'm like,
See, maybe Gary, instead of trying to write that true to life story about my father, maybe I should sit down and force myself to write something that's horror based, just to get it kind of out of my system and start to feel, all right, I can handle these things now.
you've been traumatized.
To this day, I don't. If there's horror, and you go on Netflix, you click hard and you get like 100, or Amazon, you get like 100 different movies.
Oh yeah, same with Voodoo, and I also have a Shudder subscription because I like, I will. It doesn't matter. I will put on a horror movie every day and watch one. I don't. Wow. I love the genre.
So this makes a lot of sense for you then. Doing something.
As far as the erotica goes, it was just part of this story. The one I'm writing now has none of that in it because it's not necessary for the character.
Okay, that's good.
So anytime that's going to be in a story, it has to be specific and called for the character. It's not going to be in there just to be gratuitous.
Great. So you've kind of answered the question that I was going to follow up with already about what drew you to combine the horror and the erotic elements in the story. Now, one of the things that I think is difficult for this, and I think you basically succeeded in doing this. All right. I always say basically because neither horror nor eroticism is stuff that I routinely read. So I'm reading this as if it's a story, and
Right.
how it's put together. So to me, it would seem that the sensuality and the horror would be something that would be difficult to put together. Let me just explain what I mean. Sex, sensuality, whatever, generally, if it's done by consenting people, is a pleasurable experience, something that people don't try to avoid or abhor. Horror, the stuff that was happening in here, the opposite. Like, I don't want to be anywhere near this stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't think you watched enough horror growing up because there's plenty of sex in all the horror movies.
I guess not. I guess not. So to me, it would be you had to really work at combining the two, I think.
They did well. That was a tough line, Joe, because it needed to be in there because it's part of how her as this creature, them combined, because they're not once that creature combines with her, that's it. They're a whole new person. It's a combined entity. There's no separating them. That's it. They're a new life form.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think
so it's pretty clear. That made it easier. that made it easier to combine the stuff because of the nature of what was happening?
Well, then there's only one way that they're making new life forms, and it's got to be that way.
Right.
Right. Now, all the other horrific stuff, like nectar, stuff like all that's in there because the erotic parts are supposed to be a little bit tantalizing.
Right.
But they're also supposed to be horrific as well.
Yeah, I guess the description of some of their physical attributes kind of made me cringe a little bit. But yeah, but it still was, erotic and
Right.
sensual.
And the way they're doing it is kind of horrific, and it's supposed to make you feel that way a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. So we've talked about Alexis a little bit anyway, So tell me a little bit more about her. I mean, when you say, and I think good writers do this, who the protagonist is and the major characters, and you write some kind of a, description or something about them, what they're like, what they're facing, so that you can fit that in the story. And as you go along, you keep that in mind, right? So that as you develop the story, you don't kind of go off on a tangent that doesn't really fit the character.
Right.
So when you develop the character of Alexis, what was it? I know you spoke about the fact that she was down and out and all that, but was there anything more to it? When you did her characterization, so that you would have it for the story.
Right. Well, she was someone there had to be a reason for her to accept all this and the rise to power, which is her past. And, I mention it in a few brief passages, and I think it's enough to get it across why she would make the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but when I was sitting down to write this, I wanted it to be like a one sitting read.
Okay.
Because my goal is to write a bunch of short fiction.
It was.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. It was.
Right. And I needed it to be fast paced. Because one thing that'll take my favorite novel ever is Magica by Clive Barker. That's like 12 or 1300 pages.
Right. But
there's no excess with Clive Barker writes, it's so tight that you're whisking through it and you don't realize how long it is. What takes me out of some stories is writers give unnecessary descriptions, in my opinion, in my opinion only, and exposition where it'll go on for 2-3 pages and it kind of breaks you out of the story and the character. I didn't want that. I wanted to give you little bits here and there, but I didn't want to draw you out of the story. I wanted to keep the story moving forward. I wanted Alexis to at first just be reacting to what's happening. And then once she's combined, you start seeing her make the mental shift where she's accepting what's happening, and now she's starting to take control of what's happening. So it's just she's becoming where things are going to be the way she wants them, and there's not anything around her can do about it.
So I think I'm hearing what you're saying, and certainly the book or the novella or whatever reflects that. But here's one thing that I thought, and I'll bring it up to you. And I know you mentioned that you don't like people like going away from the storyline by having these big descriptions. But one thing that I thought might have made it better for me,
right,
was instead of just mentioning that Alexis had this down and out scenario, is maybe having some kind of a either a reflection, before all hell broke loose, or something like, or an action that happened that exemplified, the terrible situation she was in. Because suddenly you just kind of read that and all this stuff was happening and you wanted to be invested in her, but I wasn't invested in her right away.
I think the bathroom scene does that though. Where she's seeing where her jaw's reset and she's seeing all her wounds that have healed and she's reflecting on her past.
Right.
The one thing I wanted this story to hit the ground running. I didn't, because when you're writing a short story, you need to catch people right away.
Right.
And I think once you get flowing with this, you're flowing. But if I opened it with her being abused by someone and we're just sitting there witnessing that scene, I thought it would seem, and I got the same advice from CJ too, and I thought about it seriously about going back and writing a little bit more in the beginning. But when I went to do that, it didn't feel right.
And you're probably right, but my point in that is, and something similar with Martin, for example, like suddenly she's a Martin is a guy, she for her reasons, she decided not to obliterate him, whatever else.
Right.
But maybe even, and I'll just say this, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. So maybe have something again where, and again, it could be a reflection, or it could be actually that something happens depending how the story is written, where you see some interaction with them. She thinks he's been one of the people that's been good to her, and let's see that. Now, the reason I say that, and I'm not saying that you didn't accomplish what you wanted for this, all right? Because I do think you did. You hit the ground running. You got the feel of what she went through. You understand why she and Martin, kind of are going through this story together in some respects. But I think this could have been longer. I think it could have been a longer story, and I think that's where, and then it would have been different. I'm not saying no,
right.
but I think it's so rich, and I think it is rich. I mean,
and I thought about that, but I didn't want it to dip into cliches if it went longer. Like I wanted the focus to always be through her eyes, her experiences, what's happening with her. When she saw Martin, she saw someone that had always been kind to her. So there was a little something there that kept her from killing him.
Right. Well, did you ever think of making it a first person story where Alexis is where she is at the end? But she's telling the story to, I don't know, somebody, or I'm not sure who, because I haven't thought it out. It just popped into my mind. Maybe as a first person, and may even have a different approach to it that would have allowed some more of this.
It could. The thing is the way I wrote it was the way it felt natural to me to do it.
Okay. And I'm not
writing it from the other perspective might have felt forced to me.
Okay.
Like this is the way that flowed through me. This is the way that I could write it. So this is how it came out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's fair, and from a standpoint of what you wrote and everything like that. Again, I like the story and all of that, but I'm just trying to critique it and kind of throw stuff your way to see what your response is.
Oh, I thought about a bunch of that.
Okay, good. Because it's such a rich story, and it just was something where I'm saying, gee, I wish I knew a little bit more about this world, and how these things are going. Now, that would have made it a different thing. I agree.
Right.
That's kind of my question,
Martin's only there. Martin's there to serve a certain purpose and to represent something for her. Going into Martin's past, and we don't need more exposition on Martin. We just need to know that Martin was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and Martin is one of the reasons she retains part of her humanity.
Right.
And one of the only reasons.
Right.
But even what happens to Martin is horrific.
Though he doesn't know it.
Yes, though he doesn't know it. Right. But but people get so caught up sometimes in erotica, they don't realize that that's what's happening to Martin is something horrific, right? And the fact that he doesn't know it's horrific is horrific too.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's kind of not really him anymore. He's been altered.
Mm-hmm. So I had a few more questions about Alexis and Martin, but I think you kind of covered it all right here. So I think we're okay with that.
Now, one of the scariest things, Joe, was putting this out for all of you guys, right? Like when everyone started reading it and it went into the community. Like when I was publishing the other stuff, I was an anonymous face. No one knew who I was. It didn't matter. If I put it out there and it flopped, no big deal. If I put it out there and people found it rude and crude and they didn't like it, who gives a shit, right? But now this story has my ugly face on it. And
Gary Baker, right there.
Right. So now, and people are finding out that,
that Gary is whacked out. Yeah, basically they're gonna.
No,
you have to go with that other
there's
story.
more sides, right? It's not because people, and I keep saying this on all things. Everyone has a different idea of what casual is, right? But to me, casual is just relaxed. It's not meek. It's not mild. It's not mousy. It's not, And I think you've known me long enough. You know I'm none of those things.
Yes. Everyone will write the story in a different way. I don't think what happens to Alexis is that good for her either. No kidding.
Right. But But with getting it out in the public, I was really humbled by how much everybody latched onto it, and for the most part universally liked it and supported it. And I mean, from day one, as soon as I posted that teaser, Mark and DJ were championing the book. They hadn't even read it. They just were championing it because they knew me.
Yeah.
They were promoting it everywhere. They were the first ones to buy copies. As soon as it was released, they had both already ordered 5 copies. Mark's dad ordered 5 copies. I had a few people here, and it was they helped have a good release because they were promoting it. Anytime I made a post about it, they were posting about it. They were sharing the post out. They were creating their own posts about it, and they helped a lot. They championed it. They took it and they ran with it when they really didn't know what it was until it came out. So they did it on blind faith.
Yeah, they trusted you. Yeah, they trusted you. Which I don't know why that would be, Gary, but I'm just joking with you. I mean, I think
it was nice. They helped give it a good line. And then everyone else, like on TM Nerdy's show, you had Cliff and Caroline that started reading passages live. And then Evil Mike did a live reading. And that's really surreal to me. I'm sitting here and I'm watching somebody read passages from my book live. And I don't know, it's odd. And then Mark said something on the interview he did with me that this was in your brain and now it's in my hand. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, Joe? Like there. Because this is the first one I've published with my real name on it, and it's out there. And, some people are going to read it, and their perspective of who I am is going to change. Other people are going to read it, and they're going to, all right, sounds like Gary.
Okay. I just have a few more questions, Gary, if that's okay. All right. So let's see. And actually, I have a bunch of questions, but you've already kind of answered a lot of them. So I'm going through and seeing what I might miss. Okay. So I think you kind of answered that one. Yeah. Was there anything? And I know because of the nature of the story. Maybe I have to ask this question a little bit differently, but did you draw from any experiences you had in real life for this story? Now, obviously, the story itself, I know you didn't.
Right.
But was there anything in there, either with the people, the characters, or some of the events?
I had an ex who had a broken jaw when I met her. And so her jaw always, like, she was really pretty, but her jaw clicked a little sometimes.
Okay.
So I think that always stuck with me because it wasn't something she could really fix. It healed the way it healed, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that kind of stuck with me. And, so, over the years, you meet different people that have had bad experiences with other people. And so it's easy to put that into one character.
Okay.
And so I think those experiences and just knowing people where things have happened to them. But for me personally, there was nothing of my experience personally in the story.
Okay. Now, so I think you've already kind of mentioned this too, but what did you want? What kind of emotions did you want? What kind of emotions were you aiming to get from the readers that are here? You kind of touched on it, but I don't know if you really kind of circled it.
Well, I wanted them to first identify with Alexis, like understand why she's doing what she's doing. So I wanted them to be empathetic towards her. And no, Damien, he's not. I like to be in control of myself at all times. Being Martin and not having control of myself would not be my thing.
I don't think any of us want to be
in control of me. But I wanted them to be empathetic, and I wanted to craft the story where even at the end, when you get the final statement of what the plan is, people are still rooting for it. They're like, the people are going to, get them all, and even though they shouldn't be. So I wanted a cool creature that people thought was cool. I wanted the erotic parts to excite and tantalize people, but I also
Okay.
wanted them to horrify people at the same time, which is
Good.
I thought was a tough mix to pull off.
Which is what I asked the question, and I wanted you to kind of go back to that whole thing about the two together. But that's right. So you're looking to basically have both kind of like a
Excite someone
fear
and
or
have them
horrible.
mad that they're excited at the same time.
Yeah. So you want arousal and fear at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting.
You know, like, that bastard, why is he making me feel this way?
I don't know what to do now. All right. Let me see. I think I'm kind of almost there. All right. So, are you planning? I know you mentioned that you're writing and obviously getting all these ideas, and you're writing something new that doesn't have any of the sexual overtones that Need has, like that.
Right.
But and you properly, as you indicated, kind of left the ending a little bit, open ended, right?
Correct.
So that people can kind of think about what's going to happen next. Have you thought about what happens next? And are you thinking about a sequel to this at some point?
For me, I don't think there's a sequel for me in it because I think what's going to happen next is pretty obvious. And to write a sequel would just be to extrapolate on what's already in there, just making it bigger scale and then bigger scale and then bigger scale. And I think that would be boring. That would be like the useless Hollywood sequels where they just take the same exact thing that happened in the first movie and make it again. with bigger. I mean, there's different things I could do. The one thing I did think about, Joe, is everything has a predator. Everything has something that hunts it. So what would hunt her? What would extinguish what she's doing? What would be the antithesis to her? Yeah. And that's something that might be fun to explore at some time, but I don't feel compelled to write it. So if I sat down to write it, I don't feel compelled right now to do it. So if I sat down to do it, it wouldn't have I think the same pace. I don't think it would have the same connection, and I think it would feel a little forced right now because I would be forcing it out of me.
Okay. And you're right. That is one area that could possibly be a sequel. But another, I think, and this is kind of what I was thinking.
She replaces Martin with Joe?
My wife is in the other room, Gary. No, what I was thinking was, and I know this happens. It's a story. It's kind of a storyline that happens. But now with these characters in this world that you've developed, you could always make it your own. Is she's feeling all this power and everything, right? She's joined with this entity, with this alien entity. But suppose there's something else going on that she's not aware of. Suppose she finds out later on that it's not all that she thinks it is. And I don't know what it would be. I'm just thinking she feels that she's on top of the world. There's this entity kind of feeding her these ideas and do this and we got this and we used to be here and now we're not, but we whatever else. Maybe that's not what's really going on.
Well, that wouldn't happen because her and the entity are now the same person and inseparable. So anything that would happen to her would happen to it as well. So
true.
But
would she sacrifice herself? She still has some control. Because the entity has to be tells her what to do, where to go, and
right. There's a dual consciousness in there.
Yes. It's like a superior Spider-Man. And at some point in time, Peter came back. All I'm saying is that it's such a rich story. It really is. And you have left it open, which is a great thing to do. That maybe as you have your little pad and you're waiting to go to work or something like that, something pops into your mind, you might want to write it down. And maybe it's something that happens a few years from now. You think about it, you know what? This might work.
Well, that's the thing, though. You never know. The inspiration might hit me one day, and that might be a note I make.
Right.
But with the character, like I would love to see like an indie company like latch onto it. Like I made a post today, like, "Hey, at Distillery, read this, please." Just because I think that would do well as like a magazine format at Distillery because they do kind of a more of adult horror content.
Yeah.
I also thought of Alexis would like. No, I'm not you, Alexa. Come on, calm down.
It's Alexis.
I also thought that she would make a good like a Vampirella or Carmilla, or
Mhm.
she hosts an anthology series, and like turn her into that kind of character for fun. You have like the main her, and then you have
Yeah.
one that you use like to introduce horror stories, like a Crypt Keeper, stuff like that.
Right. 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 All right. So I think that's it from me, Gary, at the 1 hour mark. So do you have any final things you want to say about the store, about the book or the story or anything
I
along
just want to
those lines?
say thank you to everybody. Like seriously, everyone gave this such a warm welcome, such a great launch. It's been nothing but a joy for me to get it out there. I got all my author copies that I ordered are arriving tomorrow. I got to sign and mail out like 17 of them, which is my pleasure to do. It costs me more to mail them than I get for profit for the books, and I don't care. It's just going to be fun to get them to people, and I can't wait to get, because I got a bunch of copies that people won and giveaways that I let people do. So it's going to be fun to get those out to those people. I'm going to sign. If you won one, I'm signing all of them. You guys are all going to get a signed copy. So I'm not going to, and if you ever run into me, I'll sign it. I'm not, it's fun for me just that people have embraced it, that they're enjoying it, and that they're having fun with it. And so many people told me exactly what you told me tonight, Joe. I don't read this genre, but I like the story.
Story was good.
So I mean, so for me, it accomplished quite a bit. It came out, it was a horror story, it was a creature story, it was an erotic story, and it went to people that don't normally read any of those genres, and it worked for them.
Right.
So I mean, what else can I ask for, right? It's to me, it's succeeded.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Well, I want to say, Gary, thanks for the chance to discuss your writing career, and the novella need. I mean, I think it was, like I said, it was an excellent job you did. You setting out the characters and the story. And if anybody enjoys, either likes Gary, and there's plenty of those people, but also might enjoy this story. And again, I don't go out and buy erotica, and I'm afraid of horror.
Right.
I did enjoy this story, so I think you should go ahead. And Gary, you want to indicate again how people, and I'll try to put the link in the description, but how people might be able to find this on Amazon?
Sure. So if you go to Amazon and you type in Need by Gary Baker, and then you go to the right and you click books, it'll come up as the first search usually.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But that's the thing, you have to click books after you type it in, not just
the
Need
whole
by Gary
thing.
Baker and search.
That's what I did, and I was this. I don't know how many Gary Bakers
forever.
There's a lot of Gary Bakers that are out there. So Gary, again, thank you for doing this. I kind of actually enjoyed kind of this one-to-one interview situation. I don't know if there's anybody else that's worth an interview, but maybe I'll do it again with somebody.
No, it was fun.
I kind of enjoyed doing that. Putting together the questions and talking about the book that I read, and and I mean, you've shown us another side of you that we didn't really know about. And maybe maybe it could be this, or some other thing could end up being a comic book at some point in time as well. It certainly seems to fit, at least some publishers, as to what
I think it's written cinematically.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. Oh, you know what? A Netflix limited series, but then you're gonna have to write more.
No, then they just hire writers to write more for you.
There you go. All right, Gary. Again, thank you so much, and I just want to say thank you also to the chat. A lot of good statements in here, and I hope that people that haven't bought the book and heard all the great things we talked about today, and those that watch the replay on this, will give Gary's book a chance. If you haven't written a review of it yet, be honest, but write a review of it. So that helps.
Yes, don't lie.
Yeah, don't lie. That helps, and I think that it will help get the book potentially in front of more people when they put search terms in. So we want to help Gary out with respect to that too. So again, thank you, Gary. Thank you, chat. Take care. And I don't know if I'm going to do one of these again, but I kind of like doing this.
Let's say you should do one with Doug Bratton.
I kind of did one, not like this, but I kind of did one, but maybe we will. Doug is a good guy and he's always available. All right. Take care, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.